Coming up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, despite the high marks President Park Geun-hye has received in diplomacy, analysts say she faces a challenge balancing Seoul's relations with China and the U.S. and improving ties with the North during her third year in office. Korea's nuclear watchdog approves the extension of operations at the country's second oldest Warsong 1 reactor, which was shut down 2 years ago after reaching its 30-year lifespan limit. Plus, U.S. authorities confirm the Islamic State militant known in the media as Jihadi John is a Kuwaiti-born university graduate raised in London. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Friday, February 27th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Another shooting has shocked the nation. 4 people were killed this morning in a city south of Seoul, just 2 days after another shooting in which 3 people were killed.
Now, the shooting this morning took place in Warsong, Geunhye province at around 9:30 a.m. According to authorities, the victims include married 2 senior citizens and a local police officer who was the first to arrive on the scene. After a standoff with police, the suspect turned the gun on himself. Now, the gunman is the brother of the elderly man who was killed. Officials believe that a dispute over family affairs is behind the incident. We'll be having more on the developments in our later newscasts. President Park Geun-hye will name her new chief of staff this afternoon. Her spokesperson Min Kyung-wook told reporters this morning that the announcement will come later in the day. The president is known to have accepted her former chief of staff Kim Ki-chun's resignation before last week's Lunar New Year holiday. Speculation has long brewed that Kim would step down to take responsibility for the discord within the presidential office that followed a controversial document leak. Possible candidates to replace Kim include Korea Racing Authority Chairman Hyun Myung-kwan, former Korea International Trade Association Chairman Han Duk-soo, and former Yonsei University President Chung Chang-young. Now, staying at the nation's top office in the last of our 3-part series looking at what's ahead for President Park in her third year in office, today we're going to focus on foreign policy. Now, Korea is enjoying improved ties with China, but has made little progress on inter-Korean relations. For a look at what went right and what went wrong in diplomacy and the challenges that lie ahead, here's our Hwang Sung-hee.
A stronger alliance with the United States and a budding friendship with China are 2 of President Park Geun-hye's most notable diplomatic achievements. The signing of a free trade agreement deepened Seoul's economic cooperation with Beijing, and the 2 neighbors have opened up military channels. But experts say South Korea may find itself in a difficult position between the 2 great powers.
And I would say right now, the missile defense issue and the question of THAAD deployment in South Korea is one place where you can watch this tension really bubbling right up to the surface.
Despite President Park's pledge to improve inter-Korean ties, tensions remain high. Some blame her lack of flexibility for fizzled momentum, like last year's reunions for war-separated families and a surprise visit to the South by a high-level North Korean delegation. Even the unification minister recently admitted that the Park administration's signature trust politique, which focuses on building trust with the North through dialogue and cooperation, failed to make any significant progress. But there are doubts that a fresh approach will be any better as long as Pyongyang maintains its belligerence.
She can try some things to elicit that reciprocity from the North, but until they have a more cooperative attitude, it's very difficult to achieve positive outcomes.
Another task is getting Japan to fully acknowledge its wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. With relations with Tokyo at their worst, experts say Seoul should seek practical cooperation in areas like security and the economy. Since foreign affairs is an area that requires policies with a long-term perspective, Experts say it's too early to judge whether the Park administration's diplomacy has been a success or a failure. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, staying with political news, and over at the National Assembly, lawmakers have begun the third and final day of questioning top government officials. Today's session focuses on the Park administration's social, educational and cultural policies. Now, a dozen lawmakers from both sides of the political divide have been urging the government to come up with measures for strengthening crisis management and safety systems, as well as ways to prevent child abuse and devising ways of protecting non-permanent employees. Prime Minister Lee Wang-gu and 10 others, including the nation's welfare, employment and culture ministers, will be in the hot seat today. Korea's nuclear watchdog has decided to extend the operational lifespan of a 32-year-old nuclear reactor located on the country's southeast coast. The Warsong 1 reactor, which had been powered down in 2012, now has permission to operate until 2022. People living near the reactor and anti-nuclear groups are up in arms at the decision. Kwon-soo reports.
It was on the brink of being decommissioned. But the operational lifespan of the Warsong 1, one of Korea's longest-serving nuclear reactors, has been extended for 10 more years. The reactor, one of 23 in the nation, was temporarily shut down in 2012 for review after its original 30-year lifespan expired. Last year, the Nuclear Safety Board evaluated the Warsong 1 as safe to go for another decade. This is the second time a reactor has received an extension in Korea. More difficult decisions will have to be made on other reactors in coming years. Korea's nuclear watchdog gave the state-run nuclear power agency the green light to restart the reactor after its third marathon meeting on the issue this year ended in the early hours of Friday morning. 7 members of the commission voted in favor of extension. The other 2 members boycotted the voting in protest. One of them, Professor Kim Ik-jung, says that during his 18 months as a member of the committee, he thought discussions were very thorough, but this one felt rushed.
The Warsong 1 reactor lacks the safety equipment contained within the Warsong 2, 3, and 4 reactors. That's because advanced technology standards have not been applied on the Warsong 1.
A member who said yes to the extension thinks otherwise.
We reached our conclusion after numerous in-depth discussions. The Korea Institute of Nuclear Safety also evaluated the extension as safe. Safety is our first priority. I hope the public will stop worrying and change their opinion on this issue.
That's very unlikely to happen, though, as local residents and environmentalists are furious with the extension and are expected to press the commission to overturn its decision. However, as things stand, the state power operator is expected to put the reactor back into operation sometime in April. Kwon-soo, Arirang News.
A senior U.S. official has stressed that a controversial U.S. missile defense system that may or may not be deployed in South Korea is purely defensive and will be solely designed to counter ballistic missile threats from North Korea. Speaking in Tokyo this week, Frank Rose, U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Defense Policy and Verification Operations, said the so-called THAAD system would only be used to defend against short and medium-range ballistic missiles from Pyongyang. Rose added that Russia and China should not feel threatened by the deployment of such a system. His latest comments come amid rising complaints from Moscow and Beijing. They say the deployment of THAAD to the Korean peninsula would threaten their national security. And a top U.S. intelligence official says cyber attacks from foreign countries, including North Korea, are the #1 security threat facing the United States. He also says that while low-level cyber attacks by North Korea are less technical, they can be more disruptive. Kim Min-ji reports.
The United States faces a range of threats, with cyber highest on the list. In testimony to a congressional committee outlining the intelligence community's assessment of global threats to the U.S., James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, said a number of nations stand as cyber threats to the U.S.
Cyber poses a very complex set of threats because profit-motivated criminals, ideologically motivated hackers or extremists, and variously capable nation-states like Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran are all potential adversaries who, if they choose, can do great harm.
Clapper noted that Russia in particular possesses sophisticated cyber capabilities more severe than previously assessed. Although North Korea and Iran have lesser technical capabilities, he said Pyongyang's alleged hacking of Sony Pictures and Iran's cyber attack on Las Vegas Sands Corporation demonstrate that these nations are motivated and unpredictable cyber actors. In a written report to Congress, Clapper said that although a cyber Armageddon that could cripple the entire U.S. infrastructure is unlikely, there may be a series of low to moderate level cyber attacks that will impose cumulative cost on the U.S. economic competitiveness and national security. Clapper also pointed to other dangers from the ongoing fighting in eastern Ukraine, the surge by Sunni Muslim extremist groups in the Middle East, to the nuclear ambitions of Iran and North Korea as threats to the U.S. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Lawmakers in the United States will be looking to bolster sanctions on North Korea in a meeting slated for Friday, U.S. time. In a press release, the House Foreign Affairs Committee said it will convene the meeting to discuss the North Korea Enforcement Act of 2015. The act, which was introduced by Representative Ed Royce, is aimed at expanding the sanctions to businesses and individuals from a third country doing illegal trading with North Korea. The current sanctions only apply to American businesses and individuals. The push for stronger sanctions on North Korea is in response to Pyongyang's alleged cyber attack on Sony Pictures late last year. North Korea has decided to up the salaries of workers at the Kaesong Inter-Korean factory complex by around 5%. South Korea, which was not consulted prior to the decision, says Pyongyang's move is unacceptable. Connie Kim has more.
In a unilateral move, North Korea has decided to raise its workers' wages at the Inter-Korean Joint Industrial Complex in Kaesong starting from next month. Seoul's Unification Ministry said Thursday that Pyongyang sent a fax message stating that the minimum wage for North Korean workers would be raised to $74 from the current $70.35. Additionally, it also plans to collect overtime payments as Social Security. Since opening in 2004, the Kaesong Industrial Complex has been a symbol of inter-Korean economic cooperation, but Pyongyang's latest action has disappointed Seoul.
The South Korean government is calling on North Korea to improve current systems at the Kaesong Industrial Complex, such as negotiating wages through mutual consultation.
South Korean companies at the joint complex also say a wage settlement is crucial, as the hike will likely burden their management systems. Seoul has offered to meet next month to discuss the issue further, but North Korea declined, only making matters worse. Although the South Korean government says it'll continue to push for a meeting, analysts doubt it'll happen considering the timing. South Korea-U.S. joint military drills are set to kick off next week, despite strong opposition from the north. Experts say that Pyongyang's intention lies in getting an upper hand over Seoul in making decisions at the Kaesong complex, which has been a significant source of income for the north since its opening. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Korea's manufacturer sentiment saw a slight rebound this month on the back of improved business conditions abroad. The Bank of Korea says the business sentiment index for the manufacturing sector inched up 1 point from a month earlier to stand at 74. Now, a BSI reading below 100 indicates that pessimists outnumber optimists about the Korean economy. However, the figure was still below the level seen before the Seoul ferry disaster last April. But on a rosier note, the BSI forecast for the month of March went up 9 points to 82, meaning more businesses expect economic conditions to improve next month. Improved sentiment was attributed to the steady economic recovery in the U.S. as well as expectations of a recovery in the Eurozone. Now, Korea's rapidly aging population is having a noticeable impact on the nation's workforce as well. Latest figures show 6 out of 10 employed people in Korea are over 40 years old, and experts are warning the domestic economy could soon find itself with a serious shortage of workers. Hwang Jie explains.
just over 44 years old. That was the average age of Korean workers last year. That's 8 years older than 40 years ago when those in their 30s took up the largest portion of the workforce. The average age of workers reached 40 in 1999, and since then it has been on a steady increase. It's no wonder that more jobs were added by the elderly population than the younger generation last year, while the number of employed in the 55 to 64 age group shot up by more than 280,000 in 2014 from a year earlier. That of those in their 20s rose by a mere 56,000. The portion of workers under the age of 40 also slumped to 37% last year. That same figure stood at 61% around 30 years ago. Experts say the country's aging population, coupled with the trend of people feeling forced to re-enter or stay in the job market in the later stages of their lives, has exacerbated the problem. But they say it's going to get even worse when the elderly population trying to prepare for life after retirement leave the job market. The experts add that given the pace at which the population is aging, the workforce could dry up and in turn hurt Korea's economic growth. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
Now, tech reporters and enthusiasts from around the world will descend on Barcelona over the weekend ahead of this year's Mobile World Congress, which kicks off next Monday. Among others, Korea's tech giants Samsung and LG are slated to unveil the latest additions to their lineups. Our Song Ji-sun gives us a preview.
Samsung is aiming to get a jump on the Mobile World Congress opening on Monday in Barcelona. It's set to unveil two versions of its new Galaxy S6, the standard version and the S6 Edge, at a press conference on Sunday. The Edge is set to have a curved screen that covers two sides, a technology already applied to its Note Edge model on one side. The latest addition to the Galaxy series will likely feature a Quad HD Super AMOLED display, an upgrade from the S5 series, and a case made entirely of metal and glass, drawing comparisons to Apple's iPhone 6. The S6 is also expected to feature the new Samsung Pay system, following the company's acquisition of the U.S. mobile technology firm LoopPay in a bid to make inroads into the mobile payment technology market. Unlike last year when it revealed its Samsung Gear smartwatch alongside the Galaxy S5, Samsung has no plans to introduce a new wearable device this year, so the focus is solely on its new smartphone model. LG Electronics, on the other hand, is hoping to draw attention to its new wearable devices. Its new smartwatch is able to connect to a high-speed 4G wireless network, making it the world's first smartwatch equipped with the LTE, or Long-Term Evolution Network. The LTE version of the watch Urbane enables users to speak through the device without their smartphones present, and will also come with its mobile payment service installed, which allows users to make purchases by touching their smartwatch to an NFC or a near-field communication transaction device. The watch can also be submerged in a meter-deep water for up to 30 minutes, and it has an extended battery life that allows it to last a few days on standby. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, and you'd better watch out as well, because Apple is going to host an event on March 9th that's expected to announce the highly anticipated details of its smartwatch. Invitations to the surprise event say simply "spring forward." Now, that phrase and the event's date hint at the official unveiling of the Apple Watch, as Americans will be turning their watches an hour forward for the start of daylight savings on March 8th, the day before this event. Now, key details such as full pricing information and the watch's specs remain unknown, but should be explained during this event, and the watch itself is scheduled to be launched in early April. The smartphone was first revealed by Apple last September during its iPhone 6 launch. Now, Samsung's logo will no longer be emblazoned on Chelsea's famous blue football jersey from next season. The English Premier League leaders confirmed Thursday that it has signed Japanese tyre manufacturer Yokohama as its new official shirt partner. Reports say the new 5-year deal could potentially be worth more than $300 million to the West London club. It's believed to be more than double Chelsea's previous contract with Samsung. The Korean firm has been Chelsea's shirt sponsor since 2006. Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Friday lunchtime from Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim at the News Center.
Eunice, the infamous Islamic State executioner dubbed Jihadi John has been identified as a man raised and educated in the UK.
That's right. The pieces are just starting to come together, Jin-joo, but U.S. officials, unnamed U.S. officials, have confirmed that his name is Mohammed Emwazi, described as a Londoner who moved to the country at the age of 6 from Kuwait. People who knew him said the Mohammed they knew was very different from the masked killer, now the face of IS foreign fighters. Our Eoh Jin-joo has more.
Jihadi John's real name is Mohammed Emwazi. The BBC and the Washington Post first broke the story on Thursday, saying that Emwazi is a Kuwait native in his mid-20s that was raised and educated in London. He reportedly then went to Syria just 3 years ago to join the Islamic State group. Emwazi is the man seen in one brutal execution video after another that beheaded American journalist James Foley and Japanese journalist Kenji Goto. The BBC reports that U.S. and British authorities identified Jihadi John several months ago, but didn't make it public for security reasons. The British-based human rights group CAGE, which helps Muslim prisoners, says Emwazi was a kind and soft-spoken young man, but that he felt like he was often harassed by security officials simply because he was Muslim. Various reports also say British officials suspected that Emwazi was trying to join the Somali Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab, so they stopped him from moving to Kuwait in 2010. The White House says it's not able to confirm or deny the man's identity. British police also declined to comment, citing the ongoing investigations. Still, this new information is sure to heat up the fight against the terrorist group and how authorities will go about their hunt for Emwazi. Lee Jun, Arirang News.
A group of Canadian teenagers have left their suburban homes to fly to Turkey to join the Islamic State group. Local media, including the Montreal Daily La Presse, say at least 6 men and women aged 18 and 19 flew to Turkey last month to cross into Syria, though it is unclear whether they reached their final destination. Meanwhile, a new video has surfaced online that purportedly shows IS militants smashing priceless relics at a museum in Mosul, Iraq, which houses artifacts believed to date back to the 7th century BC. A man in the video says Prophet Muhammad ordered Muslims to get rid of the statues, calling them idols from the time of the Assyrians and the Akkadians. The extremists have also burned down libraries in Mosul, holding tens of thousands of rare manuscripts and books. Archaeologists and historians say the damage done is incalculable. The Ukrainian army has begun withdrawing heavy weapons from its front line in the east, this according to the country's defense ministry. It said the first step outlined in the Minsk truce agreement on February 12th would be monitored by foreign observers. The move follows earlier claims by pro-Russian separatists who say OSCE monitors were in the process of verifying their weapons pullback. This as the break in fighting continues. Ukraine's military said it saw no fatalities in the past 48 hours, though several soldiers were wounded. Meanwhile, America's top diplomat John Kerry is set to meet with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on March 2nd in Geneva to discuss regional issues.
Well, the last cold snap ahead of spring continues to chill the peninsula today. It brought down the sensory temperatures to below -10 this morning here in Seoul, and still it feels like -6 out there. And the daytime highs will be lower than yesterday, so be sure to dress extra warmly. The winds are adding a chill to the air. Though the air quality is good across the nation and the sun will shine all day long, but it won't boost up the highs that much. much, as the daytime high here in the capital will only rise to 3, and Daegu and Gwangju peak at 5, and Busan will top out at 7 this afternoon. And it seems like Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 5 and 3 respectively, and Dokdo gets up to 1. Now the cold will ease up tomorrow, and daytime highs will rebound to the seasonal average, but we're looking at a chance of a mix of rain and snow nationwide on Sunday morning, which is Independence Movement Day here in Korea. So bear that in mind and plan accordingly. Well, that's all for me this week. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Jan, for the weather update. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Newsline at Noon.
Yes, Jin-joo and I will be back at the same time on Monday. Until then, goodbye.